morning, everybody, and welcome to the Live Well Bethel's Park uh, Health Series. I'd like to introduce Dr. Mezak. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Bethel Park resident. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I was a pharmacist before I became a naturopath, and I lived out in Oregon. I've been living in Bethel and practicing here in Mount Lebanon for about 20 years. As a naturopathic doctor, my thing is trying to help people to understand basically how you interact with the world and what's needed for your body to get better based upon looking at. I kind of simplify it. Let's look at deficiency versus excess. Hey, if you don't have what you need for your body to get better, let's make sure that we can identify that. Excess is what if you have some type of toxicity or exposure to something that your body can't process out. How can we help you to get rid of that, to remove obstacles to cure, just help you restore? It's kind of a simplistic approach, and I do YouTube shows and stuff to try to teach these things, but that's probably the most simple way I could explain it.
Okay. Because we have so many people interested in learning about healthy eating, can you touch on the basics of overview of paleo, keto, vegetarian, vegan, and whole food eating plans?
Yeah, so you asked me to come in and talk about food, and so I do a little bit different perspective. And there's all these diets out there, what the ones that you just went over: keto, the zone diet, the Atkins diet. There's how many are out there, the grape diet, and so when you look at these, the idea, for starters, from a naturopathic perspective, I'm always going to start with what I would call a qualitarian diet. Like, what the heck is that? It's like eat quality real food. The more processed it is, the more denatured and the less nutritional value it typically has. And so I teach people these concepts of, pure food, pure water, electromagnetic field protection, because in all types of aspects of that, pure air. But when you're looking at food, the quality of the food, what's coming from the farm to your table, and what steps were taken in between, that is huge. So number one, if I just can see people getting real quality food, back to chopping up vegetables, and then when you're looking at the quality of food, there are concerns with genetic modification of foods. There's concerns with the number of pesticide residues or that could be on those foods. So whenever you get foods, are you washing them with something to remove the pesticide residues? We all should be washing literally everything nowadays in this COVID age, right? And so, but washing and removing residues, are you buying real food and chopping it up, or is it, and even frozen vegetables and fruits can be great. Fruits can be thrown in smoothies, frozen vegetables, they can retain their nutritional value. But when you're breaking down diet types, we could talk about any one of those diet types. Paleo, for example. Paleo is where you're pretty much replacing grains and dairy products, mostly with free range meats, nuts, vegetables, and eating a higher vegetable and whole food aspects, and getting rid of the grains. And some people argue, well, we need those grains. There was a diet out there by Joseph Mercola years ago called the no grain diet. I've had people who thrive on it historically, because certain people, one of the signs and things that we see in naturopathic medicine is that the digestive tract is your hub between here and down there, right? It's your primary link between this external world into your body. And so there's a lot of immune activity that happens in there. And if you're putting stuff down your digestive tract that your body doesn't like, go to an over-the-counter section in the pharmacy, and what section is the largest? It's all the stuff for gastrointestinal. This is for heartburn. This is for constipation. This is for diarrhea. Because we get all of these symptoms that say, hey, something's going on. Irritable bowel syndrome is just a generic term to say, hey, something's irritating. So when I'm looking at a diet for somebody, my thing is how do I get rid of things that you should not eat? What are problem foods for you? What are food intolerances or food sensitivities or food allergies, you know? And so when you're looking at certain diets like paleo, where you're knocking out grains, and a lot of people do really well with it, well, you'll hear nowadays of celiac disease and people going gluten free because they can't digest that gluten, and there's an immune response that happens that leads to breakdown of the digestive tract, chronic explosive diarrhea, skin disorders associated with it. Because the GI tract in natural medicine is your hub. It's like this is you heal the gut, everything kind of follows behind. So when you look at any of these diets, you know, so paleo is turning around and saying let's reduce dairy and grain. And how many people eat dairy and get gas and bloated? Because at the age of 4, we find that most people don't no longer make that enzyme lactose, or you know that enzyme, that lactase enzyme to break down lactose, and so a lot of people are just lactose intolerant, and dairy causes bloating and gas and all this other stuff. And I can turn around and show you in medical books how it can promote inflammatory processes. And so when you're looking, some of these diets like paleo is great for people who want to detoxify, you know, and to for short term and getting higher amounts of nutrients from vegetable sources, and things, and nuts and seeds, and getting your fats from your nuts and seeds, and eating free range clean meats. They talk about that quality aspect. When you're looking at vegan diets, for example, vegan is like I'm eating nothing that's animal based. You know, at least vegetarian they'll bring in egg, right? And dairy, you know, but vegan's like, you know, we're knocking out all animal products, meat, fish, poultry, dairy, eggs, all of it. Everything is vegetable or grain based. And what we find with vegan is like, you know, people initially will say, hey, it's really hard on the digestive tract, but you'll adapt to it. And your body does. Your body's all about adaptation. And so in any of these diets that we talk about, are they good for losing weight? And I can turn around and at the end of this, I'm going to explain well how any of those can be good for losing weight, but not necessarily for you. So one diet might work better for somebody else because of how your metabolic activity or what you're reactive to, and you know where you're actually eliminating something that causes an inflammation response in you. And we're going to talk about inflammation a little bit. So vegan is a diet where hey, no animal products, period. You know, and there are problems with that. You know, when you knock those out, there's certain nutrients like iron, B12, zinc, vitamin D, omega 3 fatty acids. You know, some good oils that every one of your cells need. You know, you can become depleted, and long-term veganism shows some serious malnutrition aspects that can happen. And so sometimes you need supplementation. And you can see the same by eliminating dairy products and grain products. You can reduce your calcium consumption that's in the grains, or vitamin D consumption, which is most milks are fortified, and things like that. Like I said, vegetarianism is, you know, vegetarian is just like, hey, I can eat all vegetables, but most vegetarians will incorporate eggs or a little bit of dairy. And again, when you're eliminating certain meat products, vitamin B12, iron, zinc, um, um, some other vitamins can be deficient. Omega 3 fatty acids can be deficient. The classic diet for the American Heart Association is the Dean Ornish diet. And the Dean Ornish diet is knocking out fat. Let's get fat out of your diet, but you need fat. And you'll have people on the other end that say, I'm going to do keto, which a true keto diet is 90% fat. Like I'm going to have a bite of my butter and then chew up some greens because I can only eat, less than 10% of my diet to be protein and carbohydrate source. So it's like no carbs whatsoever. And most people are doing a modified keto. They'll do about 80% fat, 20% keto. And out of that 20%, about 12% of that will be protein and about 8% carbs. You know, and so can people lose weight? Heck yeah, you know, on any of these diets. But but again, that keto can lead to various aspects of nutritional deficiencies on certain minerals that are lacking because they're not getting the vegetable sources. So you can see those zinc and that calcium and magnesium and some of those deficiencies that occur. What was the other diet you asked me about that I may have missed?
Whole food,
I'm sorry.
whole food diet.
Whole food. Well,
The whole food.
whole food means let's stay away from boxed and packaged products. You know, let's eat fruits, vegetables, meats that are coming from farm to table. What can I grow? What can I raise? And how can I get that and prepare it? And what am I doing? I'm chopping things up and I'm bringing them. So if you look at, you know, a lot of research, the diet that across the board tends to be the best for people when you're looking at the general aspects of heart disease and stuff like that. A lot of people see that the Mediterranean diet, which is rich in omega-3 fatty acids with using olive oil. So when I'm talking to people about quality-based foods, the oils that I tend to recommend, because if you want to do one healthy thing for yourself, is look at the oils that you're putting in your body, because every cell of your body has that cell. And if you're eating these trans fats and these really crappy fats, you're affecting that cell's ability to get nutrition. And so monounsaturated fats like olive oil and avocado oil are wonderful for not saturating and affecting those cell membranes in a negative way. And so that's where there was a book written by Stephen Gundry called The Longevity Factor. And he did another book that he talks about, blanking on the title of it, The Plant Paradox. And he talks about how certain plants, what's in plants is these things called lectins, and they trigger inflammation. And the plants produce them, so you're not destroying the plant and pulling them off. And the lectins are found in the skin and the seed of plants. And so in his book, he talks about if you're going to eat tomatoes, remove the skin, cut out the seeds. If you're going to eat anything that's made as a seed, that, you know, like peas or beans or stuff like that, to destroy the lectins, you should pressure cook it. Or when you're eating cucumbers, get rid of the seeds, get rid of the skin. Same with zucchinis or whatever you're eating, and reducing these lectins to reduce inflammation. And there's merit to that. There's scientific merit that shows, hey, these things trigger inflammation. And so when I'm looking at a diet for somebody, the first thing I'm looking for is what is bad for you. Okay. How do I determine that? I test people for what we call food chemical sensitivity. I'm looking for what are you reactive to. I've seen autoimmune conditions. I've seen precancerous polyps disappear just by eliminating wheat or eliminating corn. Or I've seen arthritic conditions go away by eliminating tomatoes or potatoes out of somebody's diet. And so you got it, but how do you determine what that person's reactive to? Because not everybody can afford to go and get tested. And one of the best things I found in association is a simple diet that was called the blood type diet by Dr. Peter D'Adamo. And what he found is that lectins in food, certain lectins react with certain blood types and trigger inflammation or agglutination. Our blood cells clump together so you don't carry oxygen as well, and it leads to chronic inflammation in the body. And so what I have found that when I'm testing people for food sensitivities and say, hey, let's get rid of these, that I can usually tell them their blood type based upon the foods that they react to. So like type A, if you have type A blood, stop eating tomatoes. Ouch. Oh my God, there goes my salsa. There goes my pizza. Stop eating wheat, you know, and you'll find that all of the blood types do poorly with wheat products. How many of us eat breads? How many of us are eating pasta? How many of us are eating, you know, so I found that spelt, although classified as a wheat, is not reactive like wheat. Some people can eat einkorn wheat and they don't react to it. It's more of an ancient grain and it's not triggering the inflammation. When people come to me and say, hey, I can't eat gluten, I test them like, you know what? I think it's only the wheat. Try spelt. And they turn around and they do okay with it. So I find number one, remove food allergens or sensitivities is number one key. I've watched people lose 40 to 100 pounds by avoiding wheat or avoiding a food sensitivity that they were eating. So type A's, wheat, tomato. They don't do well with cashews, and they don't do well with pistachios. Same with type O's, cashews, pistachios, Brazil nuts. Type O's do horrible with peanuts, so peanut butters, go with almond butter instead. Type O's do horrible with grains, and so when you see somebody react to corn, that's where you'll see autoimmune conditions. And when I'm talking about genetic modification, we'll find that it's estimated that 90% of our corn products in our country are genetically modified. Same with soy products, and you'll see that the type O's and the type B's don't do well with the soy. So I find, number one, avoid foods that you're reacting to when I'm talking to people in regards to diet. And as you do that, you're going to see changes because you're reducing something that you're eating every day that can trigger a chronic immune response. Low grade chronic immune responses in your body saying, hey, gas, bloating, I'm not sleeping well, or whatever it may be, is playing a role. So number two that I find is, what is your metabolism? So those of you who are out there watching television and Dr. Oz is very popular about what he calls metabolic typing. Those on the internet, you'll come across Dr. Joseph Mercola, metabolic typing. So metabolic typing says that certain people either are called fast oxidizers, where they have this high rate of metabolism and they need to eat all the time and they stay skinny all the time because they can't gain weight, and other people have slow metabolism. And so if they eat, they just keep gaining weight. And you'll see these characteristics that slow metabolizers just don't digest fats. They don't digest fats as well. And they get that agglutination, and they feel sluggish, and they feel bloaty when they eat the fats. And they do better on a higher carb diet. But that does not mean I'm going to eat my 1,000 calories by going to Dairy Queen and having a blizzard, And so what these metabolic typing do, it breaks down what we call macronutrients, the percentage of protein to the percentage of fat to the percentage of carbohydrate we have in our diet. And so my way is like, how do I test people to know whether they're a fast oxidizer or a slow oxidizer? And there's things called mixed oxidizers that have a grouping. I see symptoms on both sides of that fence. And mixed oxidizer, all it's doing is adjusting your macronutrient ratios. So when you're looking at macronutrients of a fast oxidizer, they do better on higher protein and fat. Hey, paleo diet, you're probably be okay with that. Keto diet, you'd probably do well on keto. You'd lose weight and whatever else. But these are short-term diets. You'll see that people will detoxify. I don't put anybody on those strict diets for more than 3 months, particularly keto, and so, but then slow oxidizers do well on like the Dean Ornish diet. Hey, I'm going to cut out fats and I'm going to eat a high vegetable load, whereas when I talked about the Mediterranean diet and what like the longevity factor of written by Stephen Gundry, his basic diet is get as much olive oil as you can in you, these monounsaturated fats, because we need fats for how well our body can control inflammation and process things while we're removing things that trigger inflammation, lectins, And so what I help people to do is I monitor pH in people. And I tell people to look at their urine pH. And the urine pH, we use 6.4 as kind of an ideal. If people are ranging between 6.3 to 6.6, you're a mixed oxidizer. So you adjust and you have about 50% carbs, about 30% protein, and about 20% fat. If you're below, if you're going typically acidic, you're more of a fast oxidizer, so you need to slow it down. So those higher protein and fat diets do well. Paleo, keto. I'm not strong on keto, again, for short term, but bringing in like lots of what we call low glycemic vegetables, where you're eating quality sources of protein and good healthy fats. Primarily, the best fat that I would tell people is that monounsaturated olive oil. And if you're cooking higher temperature, use avocado oil because it's not going to burn like it's not going to smoke and get that oxidation that you'll get with using olive oil. So a fast oxidizer says, hey, higher protein and fats to slow things down, and you can watch your pH. And as your pH starts slowing down, then you can adjust the amount of protein and fat that you're having. when you're falling in that 6.3 to 6.6 range. When you go high and your pH is more alkaline, you're starting to slow down. And that's when you need lower fats because fats slow things down. And so you eat more vegetable load, a lighter protein. So let's eat the chicken, let's eat the fish. Hey, it's kind of paleo, but don't eat all the nut butters and all that type of stuff. So I've probably confused you more than say, wait a minute. So far, what he said is that you've given me little bits on all these diets, but then where do I go? And my thing from a natural perspective is what's causing the inflammation? What are the diets that are bad for you? Either get tested or start with the blood type diet. Whatever it says not to eat, can I do that for 4 weeks? Maybe, maybe not. It's going to be a challenge, especially if you've never tried to avoid foods and just say, I'm just going to eat more, I'm going to go to Panera versus going to Wings Ole or whatever they want to go to, and so it's baby steps. And the biggest factor with most people that I'm seeing when I'm testing people and teaching them how to eat is, are you drinking water, versus sugary drinks or caffeine and sugary drinks? And the number of calories people are drinking in these seasoned coffees and things like that is just amazing. So there are some really good programs out there for counting your macronutrients that are free, that you can get on your phone. And I would encourage people, start there, calculate. Those will help you to calculate how many calories should I be eating, and then how do I break that down? You put in what you're eating, and it helps you to say, hey, I can eat this, and you learn, not only mixing and having quality foods, which we as a basis, but the quantity of food that we eat that we need, and then drinking pure water consistently to help. Most people are dehydrated. So when I talked about that blood agglutination and the blood sticking together, how do you separate that? Drinking pure water to help your body to flush it out. So staying away from food allergies, plenty of water, figuring out what foods are appropriate for you.
I do have a question now that you brought up water. Is it better to put a filter on your tap water or get the bottled water? I've heard pros and cons of both.
I do not consume tap water. If I cook, I'm cooking in filtered water in some capacity, So in reality, if you can afford it, buy a whole house filtration system, because what are you bathing in? Well, it's chlorine, right? What does chlorine gas do to you?
Yeah.
So when you're taking a steamy bath or steamy shower, what's the chlorine that you're inhaling doing to your body? It's stressful to the body. So most people can't afford it. That's the problem. If you really look at what it takes to be healthy, I can't afford to buy organic, and I could argue you can't afford not to. But the problem is organic food doesn't mean that it has the minerals that you need either. I teach people how to test food to know whether you're eating quality food it's called a refractometer, and you can test your foods to see if it has higher mineral content in it. And concepts that weren't even asked in regards to what we talked about, and you asked me to talk about with diet. But when you're talking about water, do not drink tap water. I would just flat out tell you not to drink tap water. I would tell you not to cook in tap water, And so bottled water, I drink smart water. I drink steam distilled water, and that's a whole other story, because people say, wait a minute, that's going to demineralize you. It's going to take your minerals out. It's going to flush out inorganic minerals. But I encourage people how to remineralize with how they're cooking. And primarily when people come to me, or I talked about deficiencies versus excess, most people are minerally deficient. So I'm making sure that people are taking minerals based upon what I call your soil of your body. What do you need to optimize? And that's, again, another whole other subject outside of diet. But from diet, quality, number one, pure air, pure food, pure water. So drinking pure water and eating high quality food. Whole foods means just, not buying packaged goods, minimizing the packaging. And another big one that I like to talk about with my clients is salt. Everywhere you see today is sea salt, pink salt, Himalayan salt. Get your minerals from your salt. And salt agglutinates the blood. Salt irritates the nerves. Salt breaks down smooth muscle. I'm sure if you remember, 15, 20 years ago, Chuck, It's like get the salt out of your diet to affect your high blood pressure. Now they're saying eat the salt because it stimulates the adrenal and increases cortisol level, but take the cholesterol medications because we need to keep your cholesterol down. You know, salt drives your cholesterol up. People don't know that, but it does. It thickens your blood and causes cholesterol to be produced by your liver. So I'm really into, I tell people use only kosher salt. You know, when you're buying your chips, I buy my Trader Joe's, I get organic, non-salted chips because every dip, hummus, whatever, bean dip, they all have sea salt in them nowadays. It's near impossible to get rid of the sea salt out of your diet, but you can minimize it with how you're cooking and those type of things as well. Other questions out there?
For inflammation, what are some better common foods to eat to help inflammation? Are there any common foods to eat to help reduce it?
Yeah, well, good fats. You know, I could show you a chart that how healthy fats can, you know, flaxseed, you know, so flax seeds, like if you're having a salad, sprinkling ground flaxseed over it. If you have a morning smoothie, putting ground flaxseed or chia seeds or hemp seeds in there, you know, you're getting a protein source and you're getting an essential fatty acid source that has those omega-3 fats that will help to reduce inflammation in the body. You know, the biggest thing is staying away from bad fats, you know, the saturated fats. And so, and other people argue, wait a minute, coconut oil is so good for us in some degree for high temperature cooking and having some coconut oil or even butter. I'm okay with it, but it should not be your primary source of your fat. You know, so fats help control inflammation. But as I said earlier, with regards to inflammation, what foods are triggering it for you? So if people look up the blood type diet, you can buy a blood typing kit for $15 on Amazon. And then you prick your finger and you mix it on this card and you put 4 drops of blood with water with a drop of water and what's on the card, and it'll agglutinate. You can learn your blood type if you don't know it. It's dirt cheap, $15. Look up the blood type diet. It's free. But what I'm telling you is to do it as an elimination diet. What foods based upon that diet are saying trigger inflammation in my body? If you remove those foods for 3 to 4 weeks and then introduce one food every 5 days, you will learn what foods trigger inflammation in you. So the idea is how do I know what's triggering inflammation versus saying eat this for anti-inflammation. So curry and that turmeric's tremendously anti-inflammatory. And so you can go out to your supplement store and say, hey, turmeric, it's everywhere, anti-inflammatory, you know, boswellia, which is frankincense, and people using essential oils and things like that, you know, for controlling inflammation. I'm trying to tell you, stop the inflammation by what you're eating that's triggering it. So you would not believe how many people that I test react to wheat and tomatoes if they're type A, or if they're type O, it's usually wheat and potatoes. And then they say, well, I'm eating gluten free, but then they don't look at the gluten free that have potato starch and potato flour in them, you know, and they're eating these things that are low grade, causing inflammation. So the idea is, what do I eat? Do I take something to stop the inflammation? Give me the ibuprofen. Give me the ketoprofen. Give me the, you know, whatever, you know, medication to control the inflammation, or essential oil, or turmeric, or fish oils to control inflammation. You know, eat healthy fish. Great source of essential fatty acids. Those of you who like those, like eating the sardines, they're wonderful for you. If you can, you know, the other people are like, oh my God, get that stuff out of here. You know, but quality fats help control inflammation. So chia seeds, flax seeds, stuff like that are wonderful for controlling inflammation. But most importantly, figure out what's triggering the inflammation process in you. Find an elimination diet that helps. You know, one other way of eliminating, for those of you looking for weight loss, you know, like, is keto appropriate? You'll lose weight, you know, but there's a thing called the keto flu that people get, you know, like they get sick when they initially start it, in my opinion, because all of a sudden people who are overweight, they store their toxins in their fat. All of a sudden you have this high fat diet. So the fat levels go up in the body. And so the body redistributes the toxins in the fat, and that stuff starts coming out of them, and they get sick for, you know, 7 to 10 days. and it's a detox reaction, in my opinion. So I try to help people understand what's happening and what's most appropriate for them and how to test and understand analytically, this is what you need and this is what you are reacting to. Does that make sense?
It does, and along that lines, is diet more important than exercise for losing weight, or is it 50-50? Is it exercise more?
It's diet. It really is diet. But the
Diet?
problem, diet, exercise is, is amazing. It increases endorphins. It helps your body to increase metabolic activity across the board. Exercise is good. But how many people just don't feel like exercising? I know it's good, but I can't get out of bed, because I've got back pain and I've got pain between my shoulder blades. And when I eat, I get this indigestion that just feels like crap. And I'm constipated and all these low grade symptoms of chronic inflammation. And I'm trying to say, go to the source in your diet, eat whole foods, get rid of packaged stuff, get rid of white flour, white rice, white sugar, just try it, do a Daniel fast, fruits and veggies for 10 days, drink water. You'll feel like crap in the middle of it, but at the end of it, you'll be like, oh my God, I'm never eating that stuff again because I finally feel like a normal person again. But when people do these, they go through a detox reaction. And I could go into a whole other show just explaining all that stuff. So when you're looking, exercise is key. Another aspect of diet that's been shown across the board to help how your DNA happens to lose weight is calorie restriction and intermittent fasting. Hey, I'm only going to eat 8 hours in the day. I'm going to eat between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock. And outside those times, I'm not going to eat. And I'm going to eat reasonable portion control, not like, oh my God, it is 3:58. I have to eat every bite that I can get in because at 4 o'clock I'm stopping. You know what I mean? And so, but you learn the aspects of a common sense of quality source of calories, whole foods, and intermittent fasting and learning. So I teach people breakfast for a queen. If you're going to eat your carbs and, it's okay. Have your fruits and stuff in the morning. Lunch for a king, biggest meal of the day. When my body needs energy because I need to get through my day, I'm going to eat my biggest meal at lunchtime and dinner for a popper. And how many poppers actually got food? And that where intermittent fasting can come in because how many of us on Thanksgiving Day are going to eat so much at between 1 and 3 o'clock that in the evening you don't feel like eating anymore because you're still stuffed? If you eat a big enough lunch each day, you're not hungry in the evening. And that'll help to control your blood sugar levels. That'll help people to sleep. How many of you eat like a big brunch? I don't feel like breakfast, but I'll eat a decent sized brunch and then I'll eat a decent sized dinner, but I'm chronically an insomniac because I can't sleep at night. Well, I can explain that because all of a sudden you ate all these calories at night. And what does your body do with food? It generates energy. And then, but are you expending energy? Usually not. I'm going to kick back. I had a long day. I just want to watch something. And so what does your body do with all that energy? It has to store it. So it starts converting it to triglycerides and storing it as fat. So the worst thing you can do if you're trying to lose weight is eat large amounts in the evening and keep snacking, and then you won't sleep and you'll wake up to pee 2 or 3 times at night, and it's just this vicious cycle. And I help people to understand those cycles and find a diet that's specific for them. And how I do it is testing. And that's where I mentioned metabolic understanding your ratios of protein, fat to carbohydrate that's specific for you, and how to test by monitoring pH to see, like if you eat a food that you're allergic to, you'll see your pH go from, if you're hovering at 6, it'll dive down to like 5.2. You will go acidic within 2 hours of eating that food, and it'll crash. And I have people test what's called the Brix, their urine, to understand sugar levels, and your sugars will spike up because you get such a cell destruction. So this number spikes, this number crashes. I ate something that my body doesn't tolerate, and now I need to drink water and flush that crap out of me. And so I come about it from a different standpoint and saying these diets have their merit, but bottom line, quality, number one. But number two, figure out what triggers inflammation in you. And if you can't afford tests, do an elimination diet with the blood type diet. It works very well, And number three, you got to consume adequate amounts of water. And then number four is look at the macronutrients. Some people You know, they did a study years ago, and they talked about this when I was in medical school, where they had people go through an all-you-can-eat buffet, and they gave the size these 14-inch plates that we now go and buy as our standard plate. And when they got up to the register, they weighed everybody's food, and that's how they were charging them out. But then they had the person working the register sneeze or something on their food and say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And they gave them a 10-inch plate like we used to have, like your grandma's china. All the plates are those smaller plates that now we use for our dessert, you know? And then they went back and people were able to go back through the line, and then they weighed it and they found that people reduced the amount of food that they ate based upon what they were looking at. So we're taught in today's society, bigger is better. And if I'm going to eat all I can, boy, I'm going to pile this up. But we don't understand portion control. And if you start looking at portion control, there's a huge science behind it where you can calculate how many calories I should eat. And then you can look at how many calories are per serving. Like low glycemic vegetables, there's only 25 calories per serving. Eat all you want, you know. But when you get to fruit, there's about 150 calories per serving. When you get to protein, there's 80 to 150 calories per serving, you know. And so you turn around and you say, I need to eat less of that because my total amount of calories needs to reduce. And there's a huge science, and nutritionists are supposed to teach people, hey, let's learn portion control, you know. And that's another factor. And that intermittent fasting really helps with people because they learn, I don't need to eat to feel stuffed. I can eat and feel good, because usually it takes about 20 minutes from the time you stuff yourself before you're, before you realize that, oh my God, I ate way too much. You know, so people need to learn portion control in that aspect.
I think part of that, and we were always talking, you have to eat what's on your plate as a kid. Even though you're like, oh, I can't eat anymore. And your parents were, you have to eat that. And it was like, okay. And, you kind of get into that bad habit young, like, I got to finish this.
That. Yeah, totally.
And there is, you go to a restaurant, well, you want that supersized or quadruple size? And it's like, no, well, it's only, 30 cents more if you do this. And it's like, yeah, but
Sure.
No one thinks about the extra calories or, everything.
Well, they got rid of the Super Size Me after the movie Super Size Me with Morgan Spurlock. So what he did is for 1 month, he went to medical doctors and for 1 month and said, it's on Netflix. It's called Super Size Me. And the guy turns around and says, okay, medically, is it okay that I go and eat McDonald's for a month and have everything just, if they offer super size, I'll buy it. And the doctors are like, yeah, that's fine. And they monitored him throughout it. The guy gained like 40 pounds. He started going into liver failure. He got fatty liver and all of these things. And his doctor's like, you got to stop this. This is going to kill you. And then the way that he turned around and corrected it is what we're talking about. He went to Whole Foods, only ate a Whole Foods. I think he went vegetarian, and it took him like 3 or 4 months to get back to normal after he did that to himself. But it's just like, after that movie came out, McDonald's got rid of Super Size Me.
Yeah, well, they still offer the upgrades. You want, normal, medium, large, and we ordered something. We went through a drive-through at one of the fast food places. I'm like, oh, just give us the regular. And, they drink them. And I'm like, that's regular now? It was like 3 or 4 times the size of when we were kids. I'm like, okay. I'm looking at my wife going, yeah, we can't let them drink.
Just look at a picture of a beach in 1970 and a beach today. And you look at the size of people, and it directly attributed in 1968, they said, hey, fat is bad. And so they replaced fat with carbohydrates, and they started putting high fructose corn syrup in everything and partially hydrogenated soybean oil. And then they didn't take into consideration trans fats. And we have an obesity epidemic. When we were normal, when we were young, standard size of clothes. Nowadays, clothes are considered husky, and the kids who are skinny are thin, whereas the thin was the normal when we were kids. And we're just adapting, and people have learned to replace, emotion with food. And some people, that's where they need to start, it's an emotional eating aspect, and you got to help them to connect that, hey, there's something going on either here that you need to deal with in order to stop doing this, and emotional eating, you got to have a heart for these people, because that's what they learn to
I-
cope, to feel better about what they were doing. And so there's all types of issues that you could turn around and look around food. But when you're asking me, hey, let's talk about these diets, each diet has a positive merit. Most of them can have nutritional deficiencies with them, particularly if you're eliminating some major food group. Expect long term that that diet is going to cause some type of nutritional deficiency in you over time. And you need to be able to talk with somebody to recognize what those deficiencies are. You know, I'm talking about whole foods and quality as the primary source, learning quantity and variety in your diet, and then specifically understanding where you are. Let's meet you here and say, hey, you don't digest these, so let's give you this kind of diet until you can digest all those foods by enhancing your body's ability to handle it.
Is there a way you can work with very picky eaters? Like, I know there's certain special needs kids that, they won't because they have autism or, whatever, and they just don't eat foods they should,
Right.
because of sensory issues.
Definitely sensory issues. You know, how many of you don't like mushrooms or don't like, some particular thing because of the texture of it? You know, that's definitely out there.
Yeah.
You got to find, there's always something, that they attribute it to. Some people like the sweet tasting, so you bring in, let's try some fruits or something to that effect. Or sometimes let's blend it up. Let me give you a drink. Will you drink this? Or something to that effect. But the main thing is, you will find that people are addicted to what's triggering. I call it short-term happiness for long-term crappiness. There's certain foods that we go to, and those foods typically are the ones that we're most sensitive to. And there's psychological aspects of that. So when you ask people about serotonin, and we hear about, hey, my serotonin levels are low, so I'm taking, Prozac or Paxil or Zoloft or Lexapro or something to that effect to increase my serotonin or my dopamine levels. What people don't know is that 94% of serotonin is produced in the digestive tract in these things called enterochromaffin cells. Okay. And what's going to trigger that is what you're putting in the pipe. So if you have a certain emotional response and you eat a food that triggers a serotonin release, it's like, oh my God, I feel good when I eat this. But then afterwards, you're like, oh, I'm tired. I just need to sit back. I'm crashing, because you get this crappiness where your body can't handle that food and triggers this low-grade inflammation that leads to chronic inflammation. So when you start teaching people, and you can get these triggering foods, particularly with these kids, there's always food allergies in these autistic kids, and they have chronic inflammatory disorders, chronic bowel disorders, and they need nutritional support to help correct those type of things. But when you're working with textures, you got to start with where people are and say, okay, try this. When you're talking with adults, you got to say, hey, let me try to give it to you in a source that you're getting the nutrients that you need, and transition you to where you start realizing that when people start associating a particular food, like I feel good when I eat this, then that turns around and changes certain people's patterns of saying, yeah, now I like it, because they connect it with something positive.
That's always a good thing, connecting with something positive. I mean, I know for myself, I used to stress work out, and with everything going on in the last year, the kind of, the running and doing stuff for the family, it's turned from stress working out to stress eating. And I'm like, this is not good. Weight's coming back on. I gotta get back to the working out if I'm stressed, and recognize when I'm stressed and just pull back and not grab like something to eat,
Yeah, totally.
Exercise will. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
So exercise will. I don't release the same thing as that candy bar does, but what's easier to do,
I'm with you.
Especially right now.
So there's this vicious cycle with sugar regulation. So I teach people how to regulate sugars, and how you regulate is water flushes out sugars and salts out of your body. And most people have what are sugar crashers, and they have these vicious cycle. I get lightheaded, dizzy. I got to eat something, and they go for something that gives them immediate energy, which is usually some type of carbohydrate, and then it spikes it up, and they get this short-term high, and then they crash on the backside because the pancreas produces this insulin, and that insulin causes the sugars to go down, and then they go for more food, and it's this vicious cycle. And then those sugars, when you have high carbohydrates, those sugars get converted to triglycerides and are stored as fat. So they get fat around their visceral organs. It's called visceral fat, which is hormonally active. So women get hot flashes and all these other symptoms and mood swings, and guys do too, whether we want to admit it or not. And so women go through menopause, guys go through what's called andropause, and all of this stuff, I'm telling you, it's all food related. The problem is, I went through a period where when you realize and you start studying the quality of food that's out at the stores and what we're getting and what the potential of exposures is, like, what do I really want to buy here? So, but you can only buy what you can afford. You do as healthy as you can. So the better whole foods that you're chopping, you got to get back into cutting things up and chopping them up. And, if you're going to eat ranch, then use carrots or cucumbers, versus, chicken wings. You know what I'm coming from?
Oh yeah, I know where you're coming from. It's funny because there used to be a store in the mall, a candy store, and they sold, candy that was made here, and they imported candy from Europe, and the stuff from Europe had a shelf life of like 3 weeks, if that. Whereas the stuff made here had a shelf life of 3 months, and I'm going, what are we doing to our food that they're not doing? That they have that shelf life. It's like,
go buy a
you just start looking.
Open up a Twinkie and set it in your garage and go look at it a month later. See how many bugs eat it. Go buy a McDonald's hamburger and don't open it and just store it somewhere and go back and look at it a month later. No mold, nothing. What's on that food? So there are certain restaurants that I just won't touch, and I'm not going to here to slam anybody or anything. I guess I have said bad things about McDonald's in capacity of telling you to watch Morgan Spurlock's movie, but there you got to learn quality. So like there are certain companies out there like Panera and Chipotle and that have made choices to source locally and to look at the quality of what they're putting out there and to not use genetically modified. Go look at those cereal boxes. Contains genetically modified material. Do I really want to eat that? What does that do? If you look at the true science behind genetic modification and what geneticists, the leading geneticists in the world, they say that we're doing a huge human experimentation with introducing modified genetics into the human genome. When did genetic modification happen to food? 1994. In 1994, had you ever heard of celiac disease? Probably not. Within 10 years, by 2004, you have gluten-free foods offered everywhere in your grocery stores and options all throughout the United States. And gluten became a complete awareness. Why? Because something was starting an immune response where people were starting to respond and react to foods more strongly what they had in the past. I think it's GMO personally. It all happened within 10 years of the introduction of that into our food supply. But I'm just the
We've been going gluten-free.
Say it again?
We've been going gluten-free. We've been going gluten-free in our household. There is a lot of good gluten-free food out there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you just got to look for it a little bit.
Right. You got to watch out for the carb load when you're going for the gluten-free stuff, though. Most people, in order to stabilize those sugars where they have these bad cycles, they have to eat some source of protein with every meal. And if you have really horrible digestion, go for vegetable-based protein sources. Eat your beans, eat your legumes, even soy products, but I only buy gluten-free or non-GMO soy products. It should have that non-GMO certification on it. And then I'm okay. Yeah, that's plant-based, but I'm okay with you getting non-GMO certified soy-based products. And some of those are really good. I got a daughter who's a dancer, and she loves, those, meatless type of things. but I just make sure that I'm buying them from non-GMO sources.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I teach people on YouTube. You look up Doc Misak, DOC MISAK, you know, a model of how to test yourself at home and how to understand from an analytical perspective, what's the diet right for me? Because what we read is what we just talked about. You know, let me learn about keto. Let me learn about paleo. Let me learn about the zone diet. Let me learn about veganism. Let me learn about vegetarianism. Let me learn about lacto, you know, whatever. You know, I'm not going to do dairy and I'm not going to do eggs. You know, I'm an Episcopal, whatever. I don't know. Sounds like another religion to me. Some of the names that are pulled out based upon these diets. Quality food, quality, you know, make hearty soups during the winter, you know, and put quality ingredients in them. When you're buying broths, chicken broth, beef broth, vegetable broth, make sure that there's not a bunch of they're not coming from sources of, you know, pay the extra 50 cents for the organic broth so that you know that that those animals weren't fed, you know, crap food. You know, because there's so many issues that we could turn around and connecting quality of food to health that you know, it's hard for me to go into all that instead of saying, look, you know, look at quality number one, quantity number two, learn the ratios that are appropriate for you, and stop eating foods. Identify the foods that are inflammatory. I would tell, you know, 90% of people that watch this, if you just get wheat out of your diet, bread-based products, anything that has flour on it, get rid of wheat. Like you're going gluten-free, you are wheat-free. You know, I guarantee you saw decreased inflammation and symptoms just from doing that. Some people it's headaches, some people it's gastrointestinal gas, bloating, whatever it may be. You know, and so if you learn what foods are inflammatory, it's going to change your life. And you will lose weight because you're reducing a chronic inflammation response on your body. I mean, that's.
We thank you for being here, my doctor. I've learned a lot, and you know, I hope a lot of people in Bethel Park have watched this, and we'd like to have you back sometime next year.
Sounds good. If anybody want to learn, again, you can go to docmisak.com. I have a website that just teaches, you know, that aspect. And my practice is here in Mount Lebanon is Pittsburgh Alternative Health. So that's a couple ways for people to find me. And I thank you for having me. I love Bethel Park. I've been a citizen there as long as I've lived in Pennsylvania for over 20 years. And thanks for letting me be on the show.
Thank you.
Take care. God bless you.